Okay, this is now the 5-minute tarot for the 28th of June 2017. And today I think it's just me talking because this is Renee's third question, and it has to do with how do you figure out if a court card that comes up in a spread represents a questioner or a person in the questioner's life, which is something that a lot of people want to know about because they turn a card, it's a king, and they're not sure if it's the questioner or somebody else. And I'd like to remind you or point out that kings aren't just mature men. You know, a king's an older man, more mature individual. I don't mean mature in that they've got themselves together, but that they're older. A certain number of years have passed. But the thing is, a 14-year-old who's really good at something can be represented by a king. And at the same time, an older woman, you might expect it's a queen, but an older woman can be a knight if she's being a messenger. Like if she's bringing news to somebody or to something. So maybe she's bringing news or she's bringing change or bringing ideas that make a difference. This is being a messenger in some way, and a woman, an older woman or a younger woman, can be a messenger, so they can be represented by a knight. So if a reading is for a 25-year-old woman, a king can still be referring to her. It doesn't have to be somebody else, even though you might want to think you're a woman asking the question, this is a king, so it's not you, but it can be if she's supposed to act the way that the particular king would. And we'll come to that in a minute. Because deciding if a court card is the questioner or somebody else can be hard to do, as you probably know already. So let me present a couple of ideas first. And the first idea is, let's imagine if you put a flower in front of a mirror. In a way, you've got two flowers. You've got the original, and then you've got the reflection in the mirror. So you've got what appear to be two, but it's really just, there's one original. And in the same way, the first house in a horoscope represents the self. And opposite this first house is the seventh house that represents the other people in the life. So again, we've got you and other people, and we seem to have two things going on, but really you've got the original and you've got the reflection. But in this case, with people, other people reflect something back to the questioner. And this is because, or this may be because, we need other people to teach us about us. And that's the important point. That's why we need other people, not just for support and love and to be annoyed with, but so that they can teach us about us. And because when we look at other people, we're really seeing reflections of ourselves. And if we look at relationships and partnerships and other people this way, that they are reflections of what we're like, then we can benefit. We're no longer working with what is out there, in the world with other people, but we're dealing with and relating to what's within us. And I watched a video a few days ago with a fellow called Vaughn, who did a talk at The Future. And one of the questioners in the audience said, this fellow Vaughn is a designer. And the questioner said, where do you find inspiration? Is it art or music or wherever? And Vaughn said, the real place you find inspiration is within you. You can also find it outside, but really it starts within you. And I think that's important because that's what's going on with relationships as well, that there's what's within us and what we need to do for ourselves and what we ought not to do, that people talk us into doing because we get bent out of shape. And when we're bent out of shape, we don't realize it, we get annoyed with other people. So we're seeing what we don't like in us or what we don't like about us in other people, and that's why we get annoyed. But the solution is not to try and change them, because that's looking outside yourself. The solution is to look within and make some changes there, and then the problem will go away and you won't be annoyed with the people anymore. So there's you and other people. And that's why there was a writer, a psychic fellow, Edgar Cayce, who said famously at one point, the faults we see in others are our own faults. So that when we get annoyed, really annoyed by somebody else or what they do or what they say, if we turn the spotlight on us and understand that what I'm annoyed about in them is really something that unacknowledged or unrecognized within my own self. So if I turn the spotlight onto me, I've got a chance. But a chance to make improvements or a chance to learn something. But if I see the problem only in the other person, I'm not going to make, there's not going to be any improvement because I'm looking in the wrong place. And so with court cards, kings, queens, knights, and pages represent people. So is it, when a court card comes up, is it you, the questioner, or is it somebody who's going to come into your life, or maybe somebody who's already in your life? And it can be hard to tell which is which. But if you have a conversation with the questioner, if you get the idea from what they say and the comments that they make, that they can appreciate that other people are a reflection of us, right? That they can see that what's going on out there in the world can relate in some way to what's really going on with it. Maybe it starts with what's within us and we project it outward. If the person can get that idea, then the court card and the lesson represented by the court card, it's about the questioner. And so a court card coming up in a reading describes the questioner. Even though maybe there's going to be somebody like that will come into the life, but you know, and the questioner knows, it's really all about me, the questioner. Whereas if you talk to the person and you get the idea that they're not really interested in the faults we see in others, that they want to blame other people and that's all they want to do, or that they complain about what's gone wrong and it's always somebody else's fault, you know that you're going to have a hard time trying to explain anything to somebody who's got that fixed idea that it's always somebody else's fault. And there's nothing wrong with them. But if only other people would straighten up or do the right thing, then things would be okay. If somebody's got the idea that it's always out there where the problem lies, then the court card in a reading is going to show other people. And so you may have trouble getting them to see that there's something else going on. So a king in a spread, for a person like a king, can be a mature man who has an influence. So a king coming up in a reading for this individual, there's going to be a strong person comes into the picture and is going to act in a particular kind of way shown by the suit. But maybe you also mentioned you could, okay, this person's going to come in. You, the questioner, you could maybe act the way that a mature man would handle the situation. So maybe when you see this other person, what you do is you begin to take action and you act as if you're in charge in a certain way, depending on the suit. But if you're not prepared to act that way and act the role shown by the king who takes charge, the queen who looks at the situation, then makes a decision, the messenger, the knight who brings messages, and the page who recognizes that he's in the early stages of something and doesn't know that much yet. If you're not prepared or not willing to or don't really understand the value of adopting the role of the court card, then it's going to be somebody else in the life. So how do you know which it is? Is it the questioner or is it somebody else? So maybe you get an idea from the conversation you have with them. So if they see the world as more powerful than they are, or then the court card will represent somebody else. But if they want to have more individual control over what happens to them and over the circumstances of their life, then the court card represents them, and it represents a lesson that they can learn, or a lesson that they ought to learn, and it tells them what sort of behavior is appropriate or is right for them, let's say in the future. At the same time, maybe if you get a couple of major trumps coming up in the reading, let's say you do a Celtic cross and you get 3 or 4 major trumps, as can happen often enough, maybe this is an indication that the person can work with the idea that the faults they see in others are our own faults. And so they can make improvements in their life by taking responsibility for what happens, and without getting too upset about what happens, because they know that they've got some control over it. Whereas somebody else, you tell them that this card represents you, they can get upset or they can argue back. Or they can become defensive and defend themselves, even though you're not attacking them. So they can argue that it may be true, but it doesn't apply to them. So if you've got a situation like that where you want to kind of educate the questioner that maybe they don't have to be on the receiving end of conditions all the time, that they can begin to take some control over their own life. Maybe you mention that they know, and we know, and everybody knows, that at times when somebody does or says something that really upsets you, even though there can other people have done or said the same thing, and you didn't react or you didn't care. Or maybe that same person acted that way a week ago, but you didn't notice or you didn't care. And the fact that you're noticing now is because your idea about what you're like, your picture of yourself, is inaccurate in some way. And this happens to everybody now and again from time to time. But when we have an emotional overreaction, that's when we should turn, or it can be useful to turn the spotlight on us. Because if we do that, we don't just survive and get over it, but we prosper. So while we see the problem outside ourselves, we're going to be at the mercy of circumstances. And we're going to tend to feel a bit helpless and unable to do what we want to do. So there's frustration. So court cards can show other people, but that sort of goes along with feeling that you're not in control and that you can't be in control maybe. So you turn the spotlight on you and understand the role that you may have to play, and understand that your picture of yourself isn't quite as accurate as you think it is. And if you make some changes with you and how you go about things, that solves the problem and gives you more strength to deal with any kind of opposition or any kind of obstacle that you're going to come up against. So the short answer is, a court card is always the questioner, but they may not like it, they may not see it. So you tell them, maybe you start off by saying, if this is somebody else, then blah, blah, blah. But it can also be you, in which case act this way. Or if the card is reversed, don't act this way, don't do that. I hope that answers the question, but this is a short video, short-ish video. So if you have comments or questions, let me know and I'll deal with them as they come in. Okay, thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye.